Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what Deku had a ball-formed quirk. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. Gravity was the first villain Izuku Midoriya ever faced. It was a merciless, invisible force that didn't care about dreams, intentions, or the fact that he was only 4 years old. He had been climbing the great oak tree in the park, a feat of bravery intended to impress Katsuki Bakugo. Katsuki had scrambled up the bark with the ease of a squirrel, his small hands popping with tiny, celebratory sparks. Izuku, desperate to follow, had hooked his red sneakers onto a knot in the wood and pulled. He made it halfway up. Then the bark gave way. There was a sickening moment of weightlessness. The blue sky jerked upward, replaced by the rushing green of the canopy and the looming brown of the earth below. Izuku opened his mouth to scream, his eyes squeezing shut as he braced for the snap of bone and the inevitable pain. I don't want to get hurt, he thought, a singular, desperate command firing from his panic-stricken brain to every cell in his body. I want to be safe. The impact came, but the pain didn't. There was a strange, rubbery thwack sound, echoing like a dodgeball hitting a gymnasium floor, followed by a disorienting sensation of the world spinning rapidly. Up was down, down was up. The sky and the ground smeared into a carousel of colors. Izuku felt compressed. He felt tight. He didn't feel like he had arms or legs anymore. He felt like he was a single, unified muscle. He hit the ground again. Boing, and again. Boing. He rolled to a stop at the base of the tree, wobbling slightly. What the heck? Katsuki's voice drifted down from the branches, laced with confusion rather than his usual arrogance. Deku? Where'd you go? Izuku tried to answer, I'm down here, Kakin. But he had no mouth. He had no lungs to draw breath, though strangely, he felt no need to breathe. He tried to stand up, but he had no legs. Instead, he simply rocked forward. He opened his eyes, or rather, he realized he could see in a weird, fisheye 360-degree panorama. He looked at himself. He wasn't wearing his All Might t-shirt anymore. In fact, he wasn't wearing anything. He was a sphere. A perfect, forest green sphere about 2 feet in diameter. Whoa! Katsuki dropped down from the tree, landing in a crouch. He stared at the green ball. Is that you? Izuku panicked. He wanted to be a boy again. He pushed the tightness outward, willing his limbs to return. With a sound like a popping cork, his limbs exploded outward. Izuku sprawled onto the grass, panting heavily, his heart hammering against his ribs. He checked his hands, his knees, his face. No broken bones, not even a scratch. My quirk. Izuku whispered, staring at his palms. Tears of relief and joy pricked his eyes. Kakin! I got my quirk! Katsuki stared at him, then kicked the dirt. You turned into a ball, he said flatly. Yeah. Izuku beamed. A bouncy ball. I survived the fall, Katsuki scoffed, a grin returning to his face, though it was sharper now. So your power is running away? Or just sitting there and getting kicked? No. I can roll. Izuku argued, though the doubt was already worming its way in. Whatever, Katsuki said, turning his back. Just stay out of my way, Deku. Or I'll pop you. 10 years later, the round peg in a square world had learned that gravity wasn't the only thing trying to bring him down. Society had a heavy hand, too. Muzirufu acted as the backdrop for a superhuman society where 80% of the population possessed a quirk. In this world, the ability to breathe fire, lift cars, or slide through walls defined your worth. And then there was Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya, the teacher's voice droned, cutting through the murmurs of the classroom. You're aiming for UA High too, aren't you? The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and immediate. Then, the explosion. Huh? Katsuki Bakugo slammed his palms onto his desk, the wood scorching instantly. DKU. You damn nerd. You think you can rub shoulders with me? The class erupted into laughter. It wasn't the good-natured laughter of friends. It was the mocking cackle of an audience watching a clown trip over his own oversized shoes. Midoriya? Yue? One classmate wheezed. What's he gonna do, function as the class soccer ball? Maybe they need someone to test the durability of the robots. Another jeered. Izuku shrank into his seat. He instinctively tightened his muscles, a reflex honed over years of abuse. His skin rippled slightly, turning a shade greener, threatening to retract into the safety of the sphere, but he held it back. He couldn't transform here. It would only make the mockery worse. I've been training, Izuku stammered, not looking up. My density control is getting better. And there's no rule that says I can't try. Density control? Bakugo stomped over, towering over Izuku's desk. You're a glorified marble. You don't have an attack. You don't have mobility. You just curl up and hide. That's your whole thing. Bakugo grabbed Izuku's collar. Sparks danced threateningly close to Izuku's eyes. Listen here, you pebble. UA is for the elite. It's for people who can fight. You're just a background prop. A side character in my origin story. Don't you dare apply. Izuku didn't fight back. He couldn't. Not because he was scared, though he was, but because Bakugo was partially right. In a world of lasers and super strength, turning into a ball seemed underwhelming. His quirk, officially registered as polymer, allowed him to alter his body's cellular structure. He could retract his limbs and head into his torso, smoothing out into a perfect sphere. In that form, his skin became a strange, highly durable organic compound. He could alter the density of this form, shifting from a rubber-like elasticity that bounced wildly, to a steel-like hardness that barely moved but was nearly indestructible. It was a great quirk for survival. It was a terrible quirk for a fistfight. When the bell finally rang, signaling the end of the day, Izuku packed his bag quickly, eager to escape. He pulled out his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future number 13. He needed to distract himself. He had been working on a theory regarding Kamui Wood's lacquer chain combo. Swip. Bakugo snatched the notebook from his hands. We're not done, Deku. Kaken, give it back, Izuku said, his voice trembling. Bakugo looked at the cover. Hero Analysis? You really are delusional. Boom. He clapped his hands around the notebook. Smoke curled from the charred paper. With a casual toss, Bakugo threw the ruined book out the open window. If you want to be a hero so bad, Bakugo sneered, leaning in close, there's a quick way to do it. Find a quirk that actually matters in your next life, and take a swan dive off the roof. Izuku froze. The cruelty of the statement hung in the air. He turned, his fists clenching at his sides. He felt the urge to activate his quirk, to turn into a ball of solid iron and ram into Bakugo's shins. But he didn't. He just watched Bakugo walk away with his lackeys. He's tough, one of the lackeys whispered. But you shouldn't encourage him to kill himself, Bakugo. He won't do it, Bakugo scoffed. He's got a shell, remember? He just hides. Izuku waited until they were gone. Then, he walked down the stairs to the fish pond outside. He fished his notebook out of the water. The koi were nibbling on the burnt edges. Stupid Kaken, Izuku muttered, wiping the grime off the cover. If I jumped off the roof, I'd just bounce. The walk home was a solitary ritual of self-pity and recalculation. Izuku entered a pedestrian tunnel, the shadows lengthening around him. He slapped his cheeks. Stop it, Izuku. You can do this. You just have to be creative. If you can't punch, you have to collide. Think about the physics. Kinetic energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared. If I increase my density while moving, my mass increases. If I can get enough speed. He was so lost in his thoughts he didn't hear the manhole cover slide open behind him. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The voice was wet and gurgling. Izuku spun around just as a wall of dark, viscous sludge rose up before him. You'll do nicely, kid. Before Izuku could scream, the sludge lunged. It wasn't a solid punch, it was a deluge. The liquid villain forced itself into Izuku's mouth, nose, and ears, suffocating. Can't breathe. Dying. Don't struggle, the villain hissed. It'll only hurt for a minute. I just need to hide inside you. Izuku clawed at the fluid, but his fingers passed right through. His vision began to spot with black. His lungs burned. The panic that he had felt in the tree 10 years ago returned, magnified 1,000 times. I don't want to die. Save me. His body reacted before his mind did. The survival instinct overrode everything. Shift. In the blink of an eye, Izuku's human form vanished. The villain shrieked in confusion. What? Inside the mass of sludge, where a boy had been a split second ago, there was now a smooth, impenetrable green sphere. The villain's fluid, which had been forcing its way down Izuku's throat, was suddenly ejected as the throat no longer existed. The sludge slapped against the hard, rubbery surface of the ball. Izuku was trapped, floating in the center of the villain's body, but he was safe. In his polymer form, he didn't need oxygen. His cellular metabolism froze, sustaining him in a form of stasis. I'm alive, Izuku realized. His spherical vision showed him the murky darkness of the villain's insides. He felt the pressure of the sludge squeezing him, but his shell held firm. He was a pearl inside a disgusting oyster. Damn it! The villain cursed, his voice vibrating through the liquid. A mutation quirk? You turned into a rock? I can't possess a rock. The villain tried to squeeze him, to crush the ball, but Izuku instinctively hardened his density. He became as hard as tungsten. The villain's grip faltered. Spit him out. The villain grumbled. Useless vessel. But the villain was moving fast, fleeing from something. The momentum kept Izuku lodged inside the viscous fluid. Izuku tried to move, to roll, but there was no friction. He was suspended. Think, Izuku. Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I can't run, but I can vibrate. Izuku focused on his core. He couldn't move his limbs, but he could oscillate his mass. He began to vibrate rapidly, shifting his density from soft to hard and back again 20 times a second. VZZZZZT. The vibration turned the villain's body into a chaotic ripple. Stop that! It tickles, arg, it hurts! The villain shouted. Suddenly, the manhole cover flew into the air. Fear not, citizen! The voice boomed like a cannon, echoing off the concrete walls of the tunnel. For I am here. Through the murky sludge, Izuku saw a blur of blue, red, and yellow. Texas. Smash! The wind pressure alone was devastating. The air compressed into a solid wall of force that hit the sludge villain. The liquid body scattered instantly, unable to maintain cohesion against the sheer power of the blow. Izuku, being a solid object inside the liquid, was launched like a cannonball. He ricocheted off the ceiling of the tunnel, clang, then off the floor, thud, and finally rolled to a stop at the feet of the newcomer. He stayed in ball form for a second, disoriented, before the safety reflex disengaged. Pop! Izuku sprawled out on the concrete, gasping for air he hadn't actually needed, coughing phantom slime from his phantom throat. He looked up. Standing there, bathed in the dim light of the tunnel, was the symbol of peace. Tall, muscular, with that iconic smile that chased away all fear. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. All Might bellowed, giving a thumbs up. I usually keep this sewer clutter cleaned up, but it's a tricky one. Izuku's jaw dropped. All Might, indeed. And you? You seem unharmed. That is a sturdy quirk you have there, young man. A defensive shell. Very prudent. Izuku scrambled to his feet, trembling. You. Can I have your autograph? He fumbled for his notebook. It was already signed. All Might had signed the charred pages while Izuku was recovering. Here you go. Now, I must be off to deliver this gelatinous criminal to the authorities. All Might patted a soda bottle in his pocket where the sludge villain was trapped. Wait! Izuku shouted. All Might was already crouching, ready to leap. A pro is constantly fighting time and enemies. Stand back. I have to ask you something. Izuku cried out. He grabbed onto All Might's leg just as the hero launched himself into the sky. The G-force was immense. Izuku's cheeks flapped in the wind. Hey! Reckless! Let go! All Might shouted, looking down at the boy clinging to his cargo pants. If I let go now, I'll die. Izuku screamed. That is a fair point. They landed on a rooftop a few miles away. Izuku collapsed, his legs shaking. The vertigo was bad enough when he was the one bouncing. Being carried by someone else was a nightmare. That was dangerous, Fanda. All Might chastised, though he checked his pocket to ensure the bottle was safe. I must go now. Wait. Izuku stood up, clutching his chest. Please. Just one question. All Might paused. Steam began to rise from his body. Izuku looked at his hands. I have a quirk. But it's not strong. It's not flashy. Everyone tells me it's useless for fighting. They call me a marble. A prop. He looked up, tears in his eyes. Can someone like me, someone who just turns into a ball, can I be a hero like you? Silence stretched across the rooftop. Izuku waited for the validation he had craved his entire life. Then poof, a cloud of steam enveloped All Might. When it cleared, the muscular titan was gone. In his place stood a skeletal, emaciated man with sunken eyes, coughing up blood. Eh? Izuku shrieked. An imposter? No, the man wheezed, wiping his mouth. It's me. Just deflated. All Might sat down, leaning against the railing. He lifted his shirt to reveal a horrific, spiderweb scar on his side. Izuku gasped. 5 years ago, a villain did this to me, All Might explained, his voice hollow. Respiratory system destroyed. Stomach removed. I've wasted away. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day. 5 years ago? Was it toxic chainsaw? You know your stuff, All Might chuckled darkly. But no. It was a fight the public doesn't know about. I'm telling you this because you need to know the reality, kid. All Might looked Izuku in the eye. The iconic smile was gone, replaced by a weary seriousness. Pro heroes are always risking their lives. Some villains can't be beaten just by being tough. You asked if you can be a hero with your quirk? All Might sighed. Your quirk kept you alive today. That's something. But being a hero? It's about saving people. It's about offensive power, crowd control, disaster relief. Being a ball, frankly, it has limits. If you can't immobilize a villain or carry a victim out of debris without rolling over them, you become a liability. Izuku felt his heart crack. There are other ways to do good, All Might continued gently. The police force gets a lot of flack because the heroes capture the villains, but it's a fine profession. If you want to help, be realistic. All Might stood up and walked toward the door to the stairwell. It's not wrong to dream, he said, not looking back. But you have to make sure your dreams are attainable. The door clicked shut. Izuku stood alone on the roof. The wind ruffled his hair. Be realistic. The words echoed in his mind, louder than Bakugo's explosions. Even the number 1 hero thought he was just a round peg trying to fit into a hero-shaped hole. Izuku didn't know how long he stood there. Eventually, the sound of an explosion in the distance snapped him out of his trance. Smoke was rising from the shopping district. A villain attack? Izuku's feet moved automatically. I should go check it out. No, he stopped. Don't be a prop. Just go home. He turned away. But another explosion rocked the air, and the ground trembled. It sounded close. It sounded bad. Before he could stop himself, he was running toward the smoke. Just to see, he told himself. Just to see. When he arrived, the scene was chaos. Fire was everywhere. The crowd was pushed back by police tape. And in the center of the inferno, in a narrow alleyway choked with debris, was the sludge villain. It got away? Izuku whispered, horror dawning on him. But All Might had him. Did I make him drop the bottle? Guilt crashed over him. This was his fault. The heroes were helpless. Death Arms was punching the sludge and getting stuck. Kamui Woods couldn't get close because of the fire. Empty Lady couldn't fit in the alley. I can't grab him. Death Arms shouted. Where is All Might? Izuku peered through the smoke. The villain had a hostage. A familiar head of ash-blonde hair, Kaken. Bakugo was struggling like a wild animal. Explosions ripped from his palms, but they were uncontrolled, only feeding the fires around them. The sludge was forcing its way into his mouth and nose, just like it had done to Izuku. But Bakugo wasn't turning into a ball. He was suffocating. Izuku saw Bakugo's eyes. They weren't angry. They weren't arrogant. They were terrified. They were pleading, help me. The logic in Izuku's brain vanished. The words of All Might, be realistic, evaporated. Izuku ducked under the police tape. Hey! Kid! Stop! Izuku didn't stop. He sprinted toward the alley. What do I do? What do I do? I can't punch him. I can't grab him. He was running on pure adrenaline. He was 10 meters away. 5. Think. What are you? I am a ball. Izuku leaped into the air. Shift. He curled. His body vanished into the sleek, green sphere. But he didn't just fall. He threw his weight forward, channeling every ounce of momentum into the transformation. He hit the pavement hard, harder than he ever had before. He engaged his density control. Rubber. He hit the ground and bounced. The kinetic energy multiplied. He shot upward at an oblique angle, aiming not for the villain's body, but for the wall next to him. Ricochet. Izuku slammed into the brick wall of the alleyway. He felt the impact rattle his core, but he held the form. He launched off the wall, accelerating. He was a green blur. The sludge villain looked up, distracted by the noise. What the? Izuku slammed into the villain's eye. Thwack. It wasn't a piercing blow. It was a blunt, heavy impact, like being hit by a medicine ball fired from a cannon. The villain howled, recoiling. His fluid form rippled violently from the displacement. The grip on Bakugo's mouth loosened for a split second. Izuku bounced off the villain's face, hit the ground, and popped back into human form, skidding to a halt in the flames. Kaken! Izuku screamed. Breathe, Bakugo gasped, sucking in air. Deku? Why are you here? I don't know. Izuku cried, tears streaming down his face as he clawed uselessly at the sludge. My legs just moved. You looked like you were asking for help. The sludge villain recovered. The eye that Izuku had hit was red and angry. You again! The villain roared. A massive tendril of sludge rose up, sharp as a guillotine. I'll crush you flat, you bouncy little pest. Izuku stared at death. He couldn't bounce away. Not this close. He raised his arms to protect Bakugo. I'm sorry, Mom. Dust exploded. A massive hand caught the sludge tendril. Blood sprayed from the mouth of the figure blocking the attack, but the stance was unyielding. I really am pathetic. All Might growled, steam pouring off him, forcing his muscle form to hold for just one more minute. I told you to be realistic. While I was standing around watching a child risk his life. All Might. Detroit. Smash! The punch changed the weather. The air pressure created an updraft that sucked out the fire, obliterated the sludge villain, and sent rain falling from the sudden condensation of clouds. The crowd went silent. Then they cheered. The lecture afterward was brutal. The pro-heroes scolded Izuku for minutes that felt like hours. Reckless. Suicide mission. You have a defensive quirk, stay back. Conversely, they praised Bakugo. That quirk is amazing. You held out so long. Be a sidekick. Izuku stood there, taking the scolding, nodding meekly. He felt drained. His body ached from the impacts. He had saved Bakugo, sort of, but he had also proven everyone right. He had just bounced around and needed saving again. As the sun set, Izuku walked home, dragging his feet. DKU, Izuku turned. Bakugo was running after him. He looked disheveled, his uniform singed. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo panted, stopping a few feet away. And you didn't save me. I was fine. You just bounced off his face. Don't look down on me, you round bastard. Bakugo spun on his heel and stomped away. Izuku blinked. That was, essentially a thank you, coming from Bakugo. A small smile touched Izuku's lips. I am here, Gwa. Izuku jumped as All Might slid out from around a corner, striking a pose before instantly coughing up blood and reverting to his skeletal form. Hey All Might! Are you okay? The reporters. I shook them, All Might rasped. Kid. I have a correction to make. He walked closer to Izuku. The setting sun cast long shadows against the brick wall. On the roof, I told you to be realistic. I told you that you couldn't be a hero. Izuku looked down. You were right. I just got in the way. No, All Might said firmly. You didn't. None of those other heroes acted. They made excuses? But you, a quirkless, well, a boy with a weak quirk, you were the only one who moved. All Might placed a hand on his chest. Top heroes have stories about their school days. And most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku's eyes widened. Tears began to well up again. That happened to you today, didn't it? Yes, Izuku whispered. All Might grinned. It wasn't the commercial smile. It was a genuine, jagged grin. You managed to disrupt a liquid enemy using blunt force. You used the environment to generate kinetic energy because your body couldn't generate it alone. You analyzed the situation and made yourself into a projectile. All Might pointed a bony finger at Izuku. You can be a hero. Izuku crumpled to his knees, sobbing. The words he had waited his whole life to hear. But All Might interjected loudly, cutting through the emotional moment. Izuku looked up, sniffing. Huh, you are reckless. And your usage of your quirk is sloppy. You act like a pinball with no flippers. You rely on luck. All Might leaned down. I'm not going to give you my power. You don't need it. Your body is already mutated to withstand incredible stress. What you need isn't strength. It's geometry. Geometry? Izuku blinked. Physics. Vectors. Momentum. Friction coefficients. All Might declared, posing dramatically. You have a quirk that turns you into an unstoppable object, but you lack the control to direct it. If you want to get into UA, you need to stop just falling and falling. You need to learn how to aim. All Might extended a hand to help Izuku up. I have a proposal, young Midoriya. I will train you. For the next 10 months, until the UA entrance exam, I will teach you how to turn that rubber ball of yours into a bullet. Are you interested? Izuku looked at the hand. He looked at the hero. He wiped his eyes, his face setting into a determination that hardened like his steel form. Yes. Izuku shouted. I'll do it. Good. All Might laughed. Then meet me at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park tomorrow morning. We have a lot of trash to move, and you're going to be the wrecking ball. Izuku watched All Might walk away. He clenched his fist. He wasn't just a round peg anymore. He was going to be the one who smashed the square hole to pieces. The smell of Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a unique cocktail of rotting kelp, rusted metal, and, for the last 10 months, vomit. Again. All Might's voice boomed across the trash-strewn sand, echoing off the towering piles of discarded appliances. You are losing your center of gravity, young Midoriya. A sphere has no top or bottom, but you do. You must dissociate your inner ear from your rotation. Izuku Midoriya, currently a 2-foot-wide ball of nauseated green rubber, wobbled unsteadily on top of a crushed refrigerator. He didn't have a mouth in this form, but if he did, he would be groaning. He uncurled with a wet pop. He didn't even try to stand. He simply flopped onto the sand, his eyes spinning in opposite directions. I think my cerebellum just filed for divorce, Izuku wheezed, clutching the sand as if the earth were trying to buck him off. All Might loomed over him, not in his buff form, but in his skeletal, true form. He was holding a clipboard and a stopwatch, looking less like the symbol of peace and more like a disappointed physics teacher. It's been 8 months, kid, All Might said, uncapping a water bottle and handing it to the prone boy. Your density shifting is excellent. You can go from Nerf foam to solid steel in 0.3 seconds. But your navigation? It's still erratic. Izuku sat up, taking the water with shaking hands. It's the ricochets, All Might. When I hit a wall at 40 miles per hour, the world spins. By the time I bounce off, I've lost track of where the next wall is. I'm just praying I don't hit a civilian. And that is why we are here. All Might declared, suddenly puffing up into his hero form for emphasis, causing a flock of seagulls to scatter. To turn prayer into calculus. He pointed a massive finger at a labyrinth Izuku had constructed out of old tires, rusted cars, and driftwood. Lesson 144, The Bank Shot. All Might shouted. You must visualize the angle of incidence equaling the angle of reflection. You are not just a boy. You are a projectile. You are the cue ball and the 8 ball combined. Now, hit the washing machine, bounce to the truck tire, and land in the bucket. Go, Izuku groaned. But the fire in his eyes didn't dim. He stood up. He took a deep breath. Focus. The washing machine is at a 45-degree angle relative to my start point. The tire is rubber, high restitution coefficient. I need to hit it soft, or I'll fly over the bucket. Hard shell for the washer, soft shell for the tire. Polymer. Activate. Izuku jumped. Mid-air, his limbs retracted, his spine curled, and his skin fused into a seamless, emerald sphere. Clang. He hit the washing machine with the sound of a gong. The impact jarred him, but he held the form. He careened off to the left, exactly as calculated. Boing! He hit the tire. He instantly softened his cellular structure, absorbing the kinetic energy rather than amplifying it. He arced gracefully through the air, gravity taking hold. Plop! He landed perfectly in the plastic bucket. Yes! All Might cheered, crushing the clipboard in his excitement. A perfect hole-in-one. That is the essence of the kinetic hero. Izuku popped his head out of the ball form, grinning despite the dizziness. I did it? You did! All Might gave him a thumbs up. But don't get cocky. The entrance exam is in 2 weeks. And robots do not sit still like buckets. The morning of the UA entrance exam was crisp and clear. The sky was a piercing blue, the kind of blue that demanded greatness. Izuku stood at the edge of Dagoba Beach. It was unrecognizable. The mountains of trash were gone. The horizon was visible. The sand was pristine, save for the complex geometric patterns of footprints and bounce marks where Izuku had spent the last 10 months turning himself into a weapon. All Might stood beside him, looking out at the ocean. You cleaned the whole thing, All Might said softly. I told you to clear a spot. You cleared the coastline. I needed the runway, Izuku admitted, adjusting his backpack straps. He felt different. He wasn't the scrawny kid who got bullied for being a marble anymore. Under his uniform, his core muscles were like iron cables. You had to be strong to hold a sphere shape against the force of a wrecking ball impact. Here, All Might said, handing him a small, wrapped package. Izuku opened it. It was a pair of goggles. Not just any goggles, heavy-duty, polarized, impact-resistant lenses with a strap that looked like it could tow a car. Custom-made, All Might explained. They have a gyroscopic overlay in the lens. It projects a horizon line that stays level even when you're spinning. It should help with the vomiting. Izuku stared at the goggles. They were sleek, green, and professional. All Might. No tears. All Might chopped him lightly on the head. Save the hydration for sweating. You are going to UA, young Midoriya. You are going to show them that being the round peg just means you can roll over the competition. Izuku put on the goggles. They fit perfectly. He pulled them down around his neck. I won't let you down. I know. The gates of UA High were intimidating. They were massive, dwarfing the students streaming through them. Izuku felt the familiar flutter of anxiety in his stomach, but he tamped it down. Physics, he reminded himself. Anxiety is just wasted potential energy. Convert it. He took a step forward, his eyes fixed on the towering glass structure of the main campus. He was so focused on the destination that he didn't notice the slightly uneven paving stone. His toe caught. In the past, Izuku would have flailed. He would have face planted, but instinct took over. Trip detected. Angle of descent, 60 degrees. Impact imminent. Shift. Before his nose could graze the concrete, Izuku vanished. In his place, a green ball hit the ground. Bum bum bum. He bounced 3 times, low to the ground, preserving his forward momentum, then popped back up onto his feet, sliding a few inches in his red sneakers. Whoa! Izuku froze. A girl with a round face and brown hair was standing right there, her hand extended as if she had been about to use her quirk on him. That was amazing! She chirped. You just turned into a ball. You're like a yo-yo without the string. Izuku blushed, scratching the back of his head. Ah, why yeah? Reflex. Sorry if I startled you. I'm Uraraka Ochako, she said, beaming. Good luck on the exam. Your quirk looks super fun. She waved and walked off. Izuku stood there stunned. I talked to a girl. And she didn't call me a pebble. Out of my way, Deku. The warmth of the moment evaporated instantly. Katsuki Bakugo brushed past him, his shoulder checking Izuku hard. Don't think that little circus trick is going to help you in there, Bakugo growled, not even looking back. The practical exam isn't about not tripping. It's about destruction. Izuku watched Bakugo's back. I know, Kaken, he whispered. That's why I brought my own ammo. The written exam was a breeze. Izuku had spent his life analyzing quirks and studying strategy. The math and science portions were essentially the language of his own quirk. But the real test was the practical. Izuku sat in the large auditorium, surrounded by hundreds of other examinees. The lights dimmed, and the pro-hero present Mike stepped onto the stage. Welcome to today's live performance. Mike screamed. Everybody say hey. Silence. Tough crowd. Mike launched into the explanation. 3 types of robots. 1-pointers, easy, 2-pointers, medium, 3-pointers, hard. The goal was to destroy them and accrue points. And one more thing. Mike pointed to the screen, where a massive silhouette appeared. The 0-pointer. This is a gimmick. A roadblock. There's no point in beating it, so if you see it, run away. Excuse me. A tall boy with glasses and blue hair stood up, chopping his hand in the air like a robot. May I ask a question? The handout clearly lists 4 types of villains, yet you only explained 3. If this is a misprint, it is a shameful error for a prestigious school like UA. The boy turned and pointed directly at Izuku. And you? The one with the curly hair. You've been muttering about trajectory arcs and structural integrity this entire time. It's distracting. If you're here to conduct a physics experiment, please leave. Izuku clamped a hand over his mouth, shrinking into his seat. Sorry. Okay. Examinee 7111. Mike waved his hands. Nice catch. The 4th villain is the 0-pointer. Think of it like a trap or a hurdle. Avoid it at all costs. Battle Center B. It was a mock city. A sprawling urban landscape of concrete buildings, asphalt roads, and alleyways. It looked real. It felt real. Izuku stood at the massive gates, adjusting his goggles. He checked the straps on his elbows and knees. His costume was simple, a green tracksuit reinforced with carbon fiber weave to prevent friction burns when he rolled, and impact pads that acted as the tires of his ball form. He looked around. He saw the girl, Uraraka, taking deep breaths nearby. He saw the strict boy with glasses stretching his calves. He didn't see Bakugo. Good. He needed to focus on his own game. Okay, Izuku. The strategy is pinball wizard. Keep moving. Never stop rolling. Stationary targets are dead targets. Use the buildings. Use the verticality. Start. Present mixed voice blared from a tower speaker. The other students hesitated, confused by the lack of a countdown. Izuku didn't. Lesson 1. Real fights don't have countdowns. Polymer. He dropped to the ground, curling instantly. Vroom. He was gone. While the other students were just starting to run, a green blur shot through the open gates at 40 miles per hour. Look at him go! Mike shouted. There are no countdowns in real battle. Run, listeners, run! Izuku was the first one into the city. He could hear the whirring of gears. Target acquired. 1-pointer. Basic tracked vehicle unit. The robot rolled out from behind a building, its red eye glowing. Target located. Izuku was rolling down the center of the street. He didn't slow down. He sped up. Mass, 70 kilograms. Velocity, 60 kilometers per hour. Density, steel. He hardened his outer shell. The green surface turned a dull, metallic gray. The robot raised a gun arm. Izuku hit a discarded manhole cover that was slightly askew, a ramp he had spotted milliseconds ago. He launched into the air. The robot fired, but the rubber bullets pinged harmlessly off the spinning steel sphere. Izuku came down like a meteor. Crunch. He smashed directly into the robot's head. The metal caved in like a soda can. Sparks flew. The robot collapsed instantly under the kinetic force. Izuku bounced off the wreckage, softened his shell to rubber to absorb the landing, hit the pavement, hardened again, and kept rolling. 1 point. He turned a corner, drifting wide. 2-pointers were blocking the road. 2 targets. Narrow alleyway to the left. If I hit the wall. Izuku didn't aim for the robots. He aimed for the wall between them. He hit the concrete at an angle. Ricochet. He shot off the wall at a 90-degree angle, slamming into the side of the first robot, knocking it into the second. The collision caused them to tangle limbs. Izuku, still bouncing, hit the opposite wall, gained height, and came down on top of the pile. He expanded rapidly, a technique he called the pop-out, forcing his limbs outward with explosive force. His reinforced boots smashed into the joints of the robots. 5 points. This is it, Izuku panted, scrambling back into a ball as a three-pointer emerged. I can do this. 10 minutes in, Izuku was exhausted. The motion sickness was starting to creep in, despite the gyroscopic goggles. The horizon line in his vision was steady, but his stomach wasn't. He had 28 points. It was good, but was it enough? He was currently on top of a 3-story office building. He had found that the rooftops offered better mobility. He could dive bomb enemies. Below him, the city was chaos. Explosions, lasers, and shouting filled the air. He saw the strict boy Ida, using his engine legs to kick a robot's head off. Fast. He saw a boy with a laser navel blasting through steel. Flashy. I need more, Izuku thought. I'm slowing down. My bounces are getting lazy. He spotted a cluster of 2-pointers cornering a student. He rolled to the edge of the roof. Gravity assist. Convert potential energy to kinetic. He dropped. As he fell, he spun. He spun so fast he became a green blur. The air whistled around him. Cannonball strike. He hit the pavement in the center of the group. The shockwave of the impact knocked the robots off balance. He bounced up, ricocheted off a streetlight, and smashed through the chest chassis of the lead robot. He landed uncurling. 35 points. Warning, the PA system crackled. 2 minutes remaining. 2 minutes. I need at least 10 more points to be safe. Then, the ground jumped. It wasn't a vibration. It was a quake. Izuku stumbled. A shadow fell over the street. A shadow so large it swallowed the entire block. He looked up. And up. And up. The 0-pointer. It was colossal. It was taller than the buildings. Its green paint was chipped and scarred. Its hand was the size of a bus. It smashed a building as it moved, debris raining down like hail. Run! Someone screamed. The examinees broke. It was a stampede. They turned and fled away from the monster. There's no point fighting that. It's huge. Move, move! Izuku turned to run too. It was the logical choice. It was the only choice. All Might had said so. Mike had said so. Run away. Survive. He curled into a ball, ready to roll out at top speed. Oh wow! The sound was faint, buried under the roar of crumbling concrete, but Izuku's enhanced hearing, picked up through the vibrations in the ground, caught it. He uncurled. He looked back. In the dust cloud, near the rubble of the building the robot had just crushed, was the girl. Uraraka. She was pinned. A massive slab of concrete had trapped her leg. She was struggling, her face pale with terror, looking up at the tread of the 0-pointer that was slowly, inevitably, grinding toward her. The other students were gone. Even Ida was sprinting away, focused on the exit. She's going to die. The thought hit Izuku with the force of a freight train. Be realistic, All Might's voice whispered in his memory. You can't lift that rock. You don't have super strength. You're a ball. Izuku looked at the robot. It was a mountain of steel. I can't lift the rock. He looked at the robot's tracks. They were massive caterpillar treads, churning up the asphalt. I can't push the robot back. He looked at the distance. 50 meters. But I can trip it. Izuku didn't think anymore. The muttering was gone. The fear was gone. There was only geometry. Hey! Izuku screamed, though nobody heard him. He didn't run toward Uraraka. He ran toward the building opposite the robot. He curled up. Density, rubber. He hit the wall of the building. Bounce. He hit the ground. Bounce. He hit the second floor of the building. Bounce. He was ping-ponging between the buildings on either side of the street, gaining height, gaining speed. With every bounce, he added his own muscle power to the rebound. Higher. Faster. He reached the rooftops. He was now level with the 0-pointer's head. The robot didn't even notice the green speck zipping back and forth. It was focused on the destruction below. Izuku hit the roof of the tallest building. He didn't bounce off. He caught the edge, uncurling for a split second to grab a ventilation unit, and swung himself around. He was now a slingshot. He aimed. Not at the head. Not at the body. He aimed at the front axle of the right tank tread. The drive wheel. Polymer Max! Izuku screamed. He launched himself. He was moving faster than he had ever moved in his life. The wind tore at his skin before he fully retracted. He curled into the tightest, smallest sphere possible. Density, tungsten carbide. He became a 70-kilogram bullet of the hardest material on Earth, traveling at terminal velocity. He hit the drive wheel. Clang! The sound was deafening. It sounded like a church bell being struck by a train. Izuku didn't shatter the robot. He was too small. But physics was on his side. He jammed himself into the mechanism. The massive gears of the tread tried to turn, but they couldn't crush the sphere of tungsten wedged between the teeth. Something had to give. Snap! The drive axle sheared. The massive metal tread derailed with a screech that shattered windows 3 blocks away. The 0-pointer lurched. Its forward momentum continued, but its base had stopped on the right side. The giant robot tipped. It groaned, a metallic beast dying, and fell forward and to the right, away from Uraraka. Boom! The impact shook the entire testing center. Dust rose in a mushroom cloud. Izuku, dislodged by the crash, flew out of the broken machinery. He was spinning wildly, his density control flickering. He was falling from 6 stories up. I'm gonna die, Izuku thought peacefully. But I saved her. He tried to soften his body, to bounce, but the nausea was overwhelming. He couldn't focus. He was going to hit the concrete as a squishy human. Slap! A hand touched his back. Release! Izuku stopped falling. He floated weightless, inches above the jagged rebar of a destroyed slab. He opened his eyes. Uraraka was there, leaning against a piece of rubble, panting heavily. Her leg was bloody, but she was free. She had used her quirk on him just in time. She brought her fingers together. Release. Izuku dropped the last 3 inches. He collapsed onto his back. The world was spinning. The sky was swirling. You! Uraraka gasped, crawling toward him. You took down the giant. Izuku tried to respond. He wanted to say something cool. He wanted to say, it's all about the torque. Instead, he turned his head to the side and vomited. And that's time. The siren blared. The silence that followed was heavy. Slowly, students began to creep back out of the alleys. They gathered around the fallen 0-pointer. It was like a beach whale, smoke pouring from its shattered leg. Did you see that? The ball kid, he just broke it. He didn't blow it up, he derailed it. That was insane. Ida Tenya walked through the crowd. He looked at the fallen robot, then at the green-haired boy lying in a pool of his own sick, being attended to by the girl he saved. Ida clenched his fist. He saw the danger to the girl before I did. I was focused on the score. He was focused on the rescue. He threw himself at an impossible enemy, and won. Here, dearie, have some gummies. Recovery girl hobbled through the crowd, dispensing healing kisses. She reached Izuku. Oh my, she tooted. Severe vertigo, bruising, and a lot of muscle strain. You really threw yourself around, didn't you? Smooch. Izuku felt his energy drain, but the nausea subsided slightly. He sat up, wiping his mouth. The girl? He asked. She's fine, recovery girl said, pointing to Uraraka, who was floating onto a stretcher. Just a sprained ankle. You bought her enough time. Izuku slumped back down. I got 0 points in the last 10 minutes. I wasted my time on the 0-pointer. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. 35 points. Is that enough? He thought of Bakugo, who had probably destroyed 50 robots. He thought of the engine guy. I failed, Izuku thought, closing his eyes. I did everything All Might said, and I failed. 1 week later, Izuku sat in his room, the lights off. He was staring at the wall. He hadn't spoken much since the exam. He was already looking at applications for other high schools. Maybe Shiketsu has a transfer program. His mother, Inko, slid the door open. Izuku? A letter came. From Yue. She placed the envelope on his desk and fled, unable to bear the tension. Izuku stared at the wax seal. He swallowed the lump in his throat. Rip. He dumped the contents onto his desk. A small metal disc clattered out. BZZT, a hologram sprang to life. It was All Might. I am here. As a projection, Izuku jumped back. All Might? Young Midoriya. You have been waiting. And I have been doing paperwork. It is terrible. The hologram zoomed in. Let's get to the point. You passed the written exam with flying colors. But the practical, Izuku's heart sank. You scored 35 villain points. That is a respectable score, but barely passing. However, All Might paused. A video clip started playing. It was Uraraka. She was standing in the faculty office, asking to give her points to the bouncing boy. He saved me. The video Uraraka pleaded. He jumped right at that monster. Please, he needs points. Izuku grabbed his chest. She tried to help him? You can't give him your points, All Might's voice said in the video. But you don't need to. The video cut back to All Might. The entrance exam is not just about destroying robots. It is about heroism. How can a hero course reject someone who saves others and does the right thing? It cannot. All Might slammed his hand on the desk. Rescue points. A hidden metric. For your selfless act of diving into the gears of a machine to save a comrade. UA grants you 60 rescue points. The scoreboard appeared on the hologram. Izuku Midoriya, 35 villain 60 rescue equals 95 points. Top of the list. You passed. All Might shouted, pointing at the camera. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. Izuku watched the hologram fade. He sat there in the dark, the tears flowing freely now. He curled up on his chair, pulling his knees to his chest. Not into a ball. Just into a boy who had finally made it. I did it, he sobbed. I'm not just a pebble. He looked at his shelf, where a new notebook sat. Hero analysis for the future number 14. He picked up a pen. Next objective. Learn how to bounce around corners without throwing up. The door to Class 1A was massive. It loomed over Izuku Midoriya, a towering slab of industrial metal and bold red lettering that seemed to scream. Are you sure you belong here, Pebble? Izuku adjusted the strap of his yellow backpack, his knuckles white. He checked his reflection in the polished surface of the door handle. His tie was crooked. He fixed it. It was crooked again. He left it. This is it, he thought, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The hero course. The dream. No more middle school. No more being the background prop. He took a deep breath, visualizing his center of gravity settling low in his stomach, a technique All Might had taught him to prevent nausea. Stay grounded. Don't roll away. He slid the door open. Remove your foot from that desk immediately. Huh? Who are you to tell me what to do, Four Eyes? Izuku froze. The air in the room was electric, crackling with the kind of tension usually reserved for a boss fight in a video game. On one side of the room stood Tenya Ida, the stiff, bespectacled boy from the entrance exam, chopping the air with robotic precision. On the other sat Katsuki Bakugo, feet propped up on the pristine UA desk, wearing a scowl that could curdle milk. Oh no, Izuku thought, his soul trying to retract into a defensive sphere inside his own body. The two scariest people are in my class. It is disrespectful to the UA upperclassmen who use this desk. Ida shouted, his voice booming. And to the craftsman who built it. Craftsman? Bakugo sneered. You think I care about some carpenter? You're from that fancy private middle school, aren't you? I'm gonna enjoy crushing you. Crushing? Ida recoiled, horrified. You truly aim to be a hero with that attitude? My goodness! Ida turned his head and spotted Izuku standing in the doorway, looking like a deer caught in headlights. Or perhaps a bowling ball waiting to be thrown into the gutter. Ah! Ida marched over, his movements stiff and mechanical. You are Midoriya! Izuku squeaked. Izuku Midoriya! Midoriya! Ida bowed perfectly at a 90-degree angle. I am Tenya Ida from Semi-Private Academy. I must apologize. During the entrance exam, I misjudged you entirely. You perceived the true nature of the test, the rescue component, while I was blinded by the superficial scoring system. I hate to admit it, but you are the superior student. The entire class turned to look. Izuku felt the weight of 20 pairs of eyes. I didn't really. Izuku stammered, waving his hands. My body moved. Hey! It's the bouncing boy! A cheerful voice cut through the tension. Ochako Uraraka appeared behind Izuku, beaming. You passed! That's awesome! Your punch, or crash, was amazing! You just went wham and the robot went crunch! She pantomimed a sphere crushing a tin can. Izuku turned a shade of red that rivaled a ripe tomato. You Uraraka-san! Yeah! Thanks to you! I mean the floating thing. I would have been paced. If you're here to make friends, you can pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. Izuku looked down. Lying in a yellow sleeping bag like a monolithic caterpillar was a man. He had messy black hair, tired eyes, and stubble that suggested he hadn't slept in a week. He sucked on a pouch of jelly drink with a slurping sound that echoed in the silent classroom. This is the hero course. The man deadpanned, unzipping the sleeping bag and standing up. He wore a ragged black jumpsuit and a gray scarf that looked like bandages. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough. He tossed the empty jelly pouch into a bin without looking. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you, homeroom teacher? The class's collective thought was audible. This disheveled man was a pro-hero? Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a stack of blue gym uniforms. Put these on and meet me on the grounds, he said, turning his back. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. The locker room was a buzz of activity and nervous energy. Boys were pulling on the navy blue tracksuits with the white UA lines, eyeing each other, sizing up the competition. Man, I'm pumped! A redhead with spiky hair said, slamming his locker shut. I'm Eijiro Kurishima. My quirk is hardening. Not very flashy, but it gets the job done. Hardening? A blond boy with a black lightning bolt in his hair grinned. That's cool. I'm Denki Kaminari. Electricity. It's flashy, but if I use too much, I fry my brain. Izuku quietly pulled his tracksuit over his head. He was trying to be invisible, but physics, and his reputation, wouldn't allow it. Hey! A short boy with purple balls on his head sidled up to him. You're the guy who took out the 0-pointer, right? The rumor is you turned into a cannonball. Yeah? Izuku said, tying his shoes. My quirk is called polymer. I turn into a sphere. A sphere? Kaminari looked over. Like just a ball? That's it. It's density manipulation. Izuku clarified, his inner nerd taking over. I can shift my cellular structure to become incredibly dense or incredibly elastic. It's mostly kinetic redirection, so you're a bouncy ball. Kaminari summarized. Dude, how did that beat the giant robot? He got lucky. A rough voice snarled from the corner. Bakugo slammed his locker shut. The metal dented under his grip. He didn't look at Izuku, but the animosity radiated off him like heat waves. He's just a pebble, Bakugo muttered as he walked out. A round peg that doesn't fit. Izuku watched him go. The sting of the insult was familiar, but it didn't hurt as much as it used to. I'm here, Kaken. Whether you like it or not. The pea grounds were vast, an open expanse of dirt and grass under the morning sun. The class lined up, the blue uniforms making them look like a uniform unit, though their quirks were anything but. Aizawa stood before them, holding a softball. A quirk apprehension test? The class chorused. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Uraraka asked, concerned. If you're going to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa said, his voice flat. UA's selling point is freedom of campus style. That applies to the teachers as well. He held up the ball. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Side steps. You did all these in middle school, right? But you were prohibited from using your quirks. He tossed the ball to Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the entrance exam. In middle school, what was your best result for the softball throw? 67 meters. Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk. Aizawa instructed. Do whatever you want, As long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his arms, a feral grin spreading across his face. Then, well, I'll add a blast to it. He wound up. Die! Boom! An explosion erupted from his palm as he threw the ball. The sphere shot into the sky like a mortar shell, leaving a trail of smoke. Aizawa looked at a device in his hand. Know your own maximum first. He turned the screen to the class. 705.2 meters. Whoa! Kaminari gasped. 700 meters? That's insane! This looks fun! Mina Ishido, a pink-skinned girl, cheered. We can use our quirks as much as we want. The atmosphere lightened. It was exciting. It was superhero school. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Fun, huh? The temperature in the field seemed to drop 10 degrees. You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? Aizawa smiled. It was a terrifying, shark-like smile. All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential. He swept his hair back, his eyes glowing red. And will be punished with immediate expulsion. Expulsion? Uraraka cried. On the first day? That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters, big accidents, selfish villains. Aizawa listed off. Calamities whose time or place can't be predicted. Japan is covered in unreasonableness. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. If you wanted to go to Mickey D's with your friends after school, too bad. For the next 3 years, UA will do all it can to give you one hardship after another. He cracked his knuckles. Go beyond. Plus ultra. Overcome it with all you've got. Izuku swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. Expulsion. He looked at his hands. He looked at Bakugo, who was smirking. He looked at Todoroki, the boy with half-white, half-red hair, who looked bored. I can't fail. I spent 10 months eating sand and throwing up to get here. I have to use my assets. Test 1, 50-meter dash. The 50-meter track was lined with sensors. The robot camera hovered at the finish line. First up, Tenya Ida versus Tsuyu Azui. Ida's engines roared. Vroom. On your mark. Get set. Bang. Ida was a blur. 3.04 seconds. He's like a sports car. Someone whispered. Azui, utilizing a frog-like hop, clocked in at 5.58 seconds. Next pairs went. Uraraka lightened her clothes and shoes, running a respectable 7.15. Bakugo used explosions to propel himself, clocking 4.13. Midoriya. You're up. Izuku stepped to the line. His opponent was a tall boy with multiple arms, Mizo Shoji. Aizawa watched closely. The ball kid. Let's see if he's just a one-trick pony. Izuku looked at the track. It was flat. That was good. But he had no starting blocks. If he just curled up, he'd sit there. He needed initial propulsion. He dug the heels of his sneakers into the dirt, creating a small divot. He crouched low, his hands touching the ground. Maximize surface tension. Compress the core. Explode outward. On your mark. Izuku took a deep breath. Get set, shift. In a split second, Izuku vanished. A green sphere sat in the divot. Bang. It wasn't a run. It was a launch. Izuku used the sudden retraction of his muscles to snap into the sphere shape with such violence that it acted like a spring. He kicked off the back of the divot instantly. VZZT. He shot forward. For the first 20 meters, he was ahead of even Ida's ghost. He was a cannonball fired from a gun, but friction was a cruel mistress. Without an engine or explosions to maintain the speed, he began to lose momentum slightly on the flat surface. He didn't have limbs to pump. He relied purely on the initial burst and the conservation of angular momentum. Don't wobble. Stay aerodynamic. Hard shell to minimize friction. He crossed the line with a heavy thud-thud-thud sound. 3.06 seconds. The robot announced the time. Izuku uncurled, sliding on his back, panting. Whoa! Kirishima yelled. 3.06? That's almost as fast as Ida. He's fast off the block. Ida noted, adjusting his glasses. His acceleration is superior, but his top speed plateaus quickly without an external force. Interesting. Aizawa marked his clipboard. Fast. But linear. only useful on flat terrain or descents. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku held the dynamometer. He squeezed. 56 kilograms. Average, Ciro remarked. Izuku frowned. He handed the device back. Then, he looked at Aizawa. Sir? Can I try differently? Aizawa raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. Izuku placed the device on the ground. He crouched over it. Shift. He turned into the ball, but not completely. He left a small gap in his shell, creating a mouth-like vice using the density of his own folding body. He positioned the grip machine inside the fold of his stomach muscles. Compress. He tightened his core, shifting his density to tungsten. Crack. The machine shattered. The display flickered error. Whoa! Mineta shrieked. He crushed it with his abs, Aizawa sighed, pulling out a spare machine. Don't break the equipment, Midoriya. But noted. Your crushing power is significant. Test 3, standing long jump. This was Izuku's playground. Bakugo blasted over the sandbox. Aoyama used his naval laser to propel himself backwards. Izuku stood at the line. Rubber mode. High elasticity. He jumped, curled midair, hit the ground hard, and bounced. It was a perfect parabolic arc. He cleared the sandbox entirely, bouncing 3 times across the grass before uncurling. Clear! The robot announced. Test 4, repeated side steps. This was the nightmare. Mineta was the king here, bouncing off his own balls. Izuku stood between the lines. He took a breath. Don't throw up. Don't throw up. He curled. Ricochet mode. He slammed into the ground, angling himself to the right. Bam! He hit the line. He shifted his weight. Bam! Left line. Bam! Right line. He was moving fast, a green blur vibrating between the markers. Left. Right. Left. Right. The world was spinning. His horizon line in the goggles was holding steady, but his brain was sloshing. Time! Izuku popped out. He stumbled, looking like a drunkard. He managed to give a thumbs up before falling over. Score above average. The test continued. Izuku was holding his own. He wasn't dominating like Bakugo or Todoroki, but he wasn't last. He was solidly in the middle of the pack, until the final test. Test 5, ball throw. The sun was high in the sky. The class was gathered around the circle. Uraraka stepped up. She touched the ball. It floated. She slapped it. It floated up. And up. And up. Infinity. Infinity? The class screamed. That's cheating. That's awesome. Aizawa looked bored. Midoriya. You're next. Izuku walked to the circle. He didn't take a ball from the basket. He stood in the center, looking at the teacher. Sir? Izuku said, his voice quiet but steady. The instructions are to throw the ball as far as possible. Correct. But my quirk doesn't let me throw things better. It makes me the thing, the class murmured. So? Aizawa asked. So. Izuku took a breath. Can I be the ball? Silence. Dude, Kaminari whispered. Is he gonna throw himself? How do you throw yourself? Jiro asked. Aizawa stared at Izuku. His expression was unreadable. The test is to gauge your potential in a quirk-based scenario, Aizawa said slowly. In a rescue or combat situation, you are the asset. If you can launch yourself, that counts. I can't launch myself, Izuku admitted. Not for distance. I need propulsion. He turned to the class. I need a launcher. Aizawa checked his watch. Heroes often cooperate. Use whatever assets are available within the class. But you must remain within the circle until launch. Izuku scanned the faces. Ida? No, his kick might break Izuku's ribs before he fully hardened. Sado? Strong, but just a throw. He needed height. He needed distance. He walked over to Uraraka. Uraraka-san. Yeah? She blinked. Can you use your quirk on me? Sure. She smiled. But if you're floating, you won't go anywhere unless you push off something. I know. Izuku turned. He walked toward the one person who would hate this the most. Kaken. Bakugo looked at him like he was a bug on a windshield. Huh? Get away from me, Deku. I need you to blast me. The class went silent. Huh? Bakugo's hands started smoking. You want to die? I need to go far, Izuku said, staring into Bakugo's angry red eyes. You have the strongest explosion. You're the only one who can do it. Bakugo paused. The compliment, that he was the strongest, landed. But the request was insulting. Why should I help you, Pebble? Because, Aizawa interjected, looking at his clipboard. If Midoriya fails, he gets expelled. And if you refuse to cooperate in a team-based exercise, I might deduct points from your total, Bakugo. Heroes don't let personal grudges stop the mission. Bakugo's jaw worked. He ground his teeth. He looked at Aizawa, then at Izuku. Fine, Bakugo growled, stepping into the circle. He shoved Izuku. But if you screw up my launch, I'll kill you. I won't, Izuku said. The setup was bizarre. Izuku stood in the center. Uraraka stood to his left. Bakugo stood behind him. Ready? Izuku asked. Just do it before I change my mind. Bakugo spat. Polymer activate. Izuku curled. He became the perfect green sphere. Uraraka-san, now! Izuku's muffled voice came from the ball. Uraraka tapped the top of the sphere with her fingertips. Zero gravity! Instantly, the ball hovered. It lifted an inch off the ground, weightless. Bakugo grinned. It was a nasty, predatory grin. He placed both hands flat against the back of the floating sphere. Don't blame me if you land in the next prefecture, Deku! Heat gathered in Bakugo's palms. The air shimmered. Blast rush. Turbo! Boom! The explosion was massive. A shockwave kicked up dust and dirt, forcing the other students to cover their eyes. Out of the smoke, a green streak shot into the sky. Because Izuku was weightless, the explosion didn't have to fight gravity. It only had to fight air resistance. And because Izuku was a smooth sphere, air resistance was minimal. He vanished. He was a speck. Then a dot. Then nothing. He pierced the clouds. High in the atmosphere, Izuku was spinning wildly. The view was terrifying. He could see the curvature of the earth. I'm really high, he thought, panic flirting with his consciousness. If Uraraka releases me now, I'll be a meteor. Down on the ground, the class watched the sky. He's gone, Siro said. He's not coming down. Tsuyu observed. Ribbit. Aizawa watched his phone. The GPS tracker in Izuku's gym uniform was blinking rapidly. The altitude meter was climbing. The distance meter was spinning. Since gravity wasn't pulling him down, and friction was the only thing slowing him, he was effectively in low Earth orbit for the duration of the quirk. Aizawa turned the screen to the class. Infinity. Again? The class roared. It makes sense. Momo Yaoyorozu spoke up, her hand on her chin. Without gravitational pull, an object in motion stays in motion. Until Uraraka releases her quirk, he is effectively a satellite. Bakugo stared at the sky. His hands were still smoking. He had launched Deku. He had given the pebble wings. Damn it! Bakugo kicked the dirt. Why does it feel like I lost? Aizawa picked up a megaphone. Uraraka. Release him. But maybe wait a minute. Or he'll land in the ocean. 10 minutes later, a very dizzy, very cold Izuku Midoriya was retrieved from a rice paddy 3 kilometers away by a retrieval robot. He stumbled back to the group, shivering. That was cold, Izuku chattered. You crazy bastard! Kirishima slapped him on the back. That was manly as hell. You turned yourself into a missile. Rational, Aizawa said. The class quieted down. Aizawa looked at Izuku. You utilized your classmates' quirks to cover your own weaknesses. You turned a defensive quirk into a mobility asset. You understood the physics of the situation. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. However, if you had done that alone, you would be dead. Or stuck. You have zero solo mobility in the air. I know. Izuku bowed his head. I need to work on that. Good. Now, the results. Aizawa pressed a button on his phone. A hologram projected into the air. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 4. Tenya Ida. 9. Izuku Midoriya. 20. Toru Hagakure. Izuku scanned the list. He was 9th. He was safe. His eyes drifted to the bottom. Toru Hagakure, the invisible girl. Oh no! Uraraka whispered. Hagakure-chan. The invisible girl's gloves were trembling. I'm expelled? Aizawa grinned. The shark's smile returned. By the way, the expulsion part was a lie. The world stopped. Huh, it was a logical ruse, Aizawa said, waving a hand dismissively. To draw out the upper limits of your quirks. The class stood frozen, their brains trying to process the whiplash. A lie? Of course it was a lie, Yayarosa said, sighing with relief. It was obvious if you thought about it. I didn't think it was obvious, Mineta cried, clutching his chest. Cyril looked at Izuku. Man, I really thought you were gonna die there for a second. Me too. Izuku laughed nervously. Aizawa turned to walk away. Pick up a syllabus in the classroom. Midoriya, go to the nurse's office. Your inner ear is probably scrambled. As Aizawa trudged away, Izuku let out a breath he felt he'd been holding since he was 4 years old. He looked at his hands. He had survived. He wasn't expelled. He was a hero student. Hey, Deku, Izuku stiffened. He turned around. Bakugo stood there. The explosions were gone, but the intensity wasn't. You used me, Bakugo said quietly. I asked for help, Kaken. Don't get used to it, Bakugo growled. He stepped closer, leaning into Izuku's space. Next time, I'm not launching you. I'm blasting you apart. You're still just a ball. And balls are meant to be kicked. Bakugo shoved his hands in his pockets and walked away. Izuku watched him go. It wasn't a truce. It wasn't friendship. But it was an acknowledgement. Bakugo had looked at him and seen a rival, not a roadside pebble. Hey, Midoriya! Uraraka ran up to him. Let's go get changed. I'm starving. Yeah. Ida joined them. We must replenish our energy. That launch was calculated perfectly, though reckless, Izuku smiled. He walked toward the building, flanked by his new friends. I'm rolling, he thought. And I'm not stopping. Bonus scene. In the teacher's lounge, All Might peeked around the corner. So? Aizawa-kun? Was he a zero potential student? Aizawa sat at his desk, putting eye drops in. He's reckless, Aizawa muttered. He throws himself into danger without a plan for the landing. He relies too much on durability. But? All Might pressed. Aizawa smirked. But he's got guts. And he's smart. He figured out how to use that angry blonde kid as a booster rocket. That's rational. Aizawa pulled up the file for Izuku Midoriya. He stays. For now. All Might pumped a fist silently. Yes, I am here. The voice boomed from the doorway, shaking the very foundations of the classroom. It was a sound that usually signaled salvation, the arrival of peace, the end of fear. But today, for the students of Class 1A, it signaled something far more terrifying and exhilarating. Coming through the door like a normal person, All Might, the #1 hero, marched into the room wearing his Silver Age costume, a cape fluttering in a non-existent breeze, muscles gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The class erupted. It's really him! Kaminari gasped, leaning over his desk. He's huge! Look at that costume! Kirishima added. So retro. So manly. All Might marched to the podium, striking a pose that highlighted his biceps. Foundational Hero Studies. For this class, we'll be building your hero foundation through various trials. Let's jump right in with this. He pulled out a card with the word battle emblazoned on it in bold comic book font. The trial of battle. Izuku Midoriya felt a jolt of adrenaline. Battle. Real combat training. This was what he had been waiting for. The written exams and physical tests were one thing, but this was the core of heroism. And to go with that, All Might pointed to the wall, where panels were sliding open to reveal numbered metal cases. We have prepared the gear you requested to match your quirks. Costumes. The class cheered in unison. Get changed and meet me at ground beta. All Might commanded. And remember, from here on out you are all heroes. The locker room was a chaotic storm of excitement. Zippers zipped, Velcro tore, and fabric rustled as the students transformed from high schoolers into their alter egos. Izuku stood in front of his open case. He stared at the green fabric inside. His mother had bought the base jumpsuit, but the support company had added the specifications he needed. He pulled it on. It was a dark green, full-body unitard made of a high-tensile, friction-resistant polymer blend. It was designed to withstand extreme heat and abrasion, essential for someone whose primary mode of transport involved grinding against asphalt at 60 miles per hour. But the most important parts were the pads. Large, white, hexagonal plates were sewn into the shoulders, knees, elbows, and back. To the untrained eye, they looked like standard riot gear. But Izuku knew the design. When he curled into a ball, these plates interlocked like a puzzle, forming a seamless, shock-absorbing outer shell over his hardened skin. He pulled on the gloves, which had similar plating on the back of the hands, and finally, the helmet. It was a sleek, aerodynamic design with a reinforced visor and a jaw guard that snapped shut. When he tucked his head, the helmet became the final piece of the sphere, protecting his skull from the G-force. He looked in the mirror. He didn't look like All Might. He looked round, sturdy, like a wrecking ball painted green. Midoriya! Uraraka's voice came from the tunnel entrance. You look cool. Very aerodynamic. Izuku turned and felt his face heat up instantly. Uraraka was wearing a skin-tight pink and black suit that, well, it left very little to the imagination. Uraraka-san? Izuku stammered, averting his eyes to the concrete wall. Why you look, practical. Very zero gravity. I should have been more specific with my design requests, she laughed nervously, scratching her cheek. It's a bit tight. But hey, your suit looks tough. Like a tank. Thanks, Izuku said, adjusting his gloves. I call it the impact suit gamma. It reduces the vertigo. Shall we begin, Zygotes? All Might bellowed from the monitoring room entrance. The class gathered in front of a large, brutalist concrete building. It looked like a villain's hideout from an old movie. Here is the situation, All Might explained. The villains have hidden a nuclear weapon somewhere in the hideout. The heroes must go in and either capture the villains or secure the weapon within the time limit. He held up a yellow box. Teams will be decided by lots. Izuku watched as names were drawn. Team A, Heroes Izuku Midoriya Ochako Uraraka. Team D, Villains Katsuki Bakugo Tenya Ida. Izuku felt the blood drain from his face. Of course. Fate had a sense of humor, and it was a cruel one. Across the crowd, Bakugo was staring at him. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't making explosions. He was just vibrating. A low, menacing tremor of pure rage. He wore large, grenade-shaped gauntlets that looked heavy enough to punch through a wall. Bakugo, Ida said, adjusting his glasses. We are partners. We must discuss strategy. Shut up, Bakugo growled, not breaking eye contact with Izuku. I'm gonna crush him. We are villains, Ida insisted. We should act the part. But crushing a classmate is excessive. He's not a classmate, Bakugo spat. He's a pebble that needs to be ground into dust. 5 minutes later. Inside the building, Ida was busy. He had removed every piece of furniture from the room on the 5th floor where the papier-mâché bombs sat. A clean room offers no hiding spots, Ida declared, chopping the air. He tapped his helmet. Bakugo. Are you in position? I'm on the 2nd floor, Bakugo's voice crackled over the comms. Don't tell me what to do. Remember the objective. Protect the weapon. The objective, Bakugo hissed, is to prove that a ball can be popped. Outside, Izuku and Uraraka stood by the blueprints of the building. Okay, Uraraka-san, Izuku said, his voice shaking slightly but his eyes focused. I know Kaken. He's going to come for me. He won't care about the weapon. He won't care about the time limit. He wants to beat me. So, he's going to ambush us? Uraraka asked, tilting her head. Yes. Probably immediately. Izuku tapped the map. I'll draw his fire. I'll make him chase me. While he's distracted, you use your zero gravity to float up the central shaft or the stairs and find the weapon. Leave you alone with him? Uraraka looked worried. But he looks really scary. He is, Izuku admitted. But I have the advantage in this environment. Indoors means walls. Walls mean ricochets. He pulled his goggles down over his eyes. The holographic horizon line flickered to life. I'm not the same Deku he used to beat up, Izuku said, clenching his fist. I can move. Hero team, enter. All Might's voice blared over the speakers. Izuku and Uraraka climbed through a first-floor window. The interior was dim, lit only by flickering fluorescent bulbs. The air smelled of dust and old concrete. They moved silently down the hallway. Step. 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 Izuku's ears twitched. He felt it in his feet before he heard it. A vibration in the floorboards. Uraraka! Down! Izuku tackled her just as the wall next to them exploded. Boom! Debris showered the hallway. Smoke filled the air. Out of the dust, a figure emerged, smoke curling from a massive gauntlet. Found you, Bakugo grinned. It was a feral look. He didn't wait. He lunged, swinging his right arm. Izuku didn't dodge. He dropped. In a fraction of a second, Izuku curled into a ball. His helmet locked into his knee pads. His back plates sealed. He became a sphere. Bakugo's explosion hit the top of the sphere. Normally, a person would be incinerated or blown back. But Izuku had shifted his density to tungsten heavy. He weighed as much as a small car in that instant. The explosion washed over his shell, scorching the green paint but failing to move him. Bakugo blinked. What the? Izuku shifted density again. Super-elastic rubber. Using the downward force of Bakugo's explosion as a trigger, Izuku decompressed his muscles against the floor. Boing! He shot straight up, directly into Bakugo's solar plexus. Gah! Bakugo gasped, the wind knocked out of him. He stumbled back. Izuku uncurled in midair, landing on his feet 5 meters away. Go, Uraraka! Izuku shouted. Uraraka scrambled up. Right. She touched herself. Release. And floated toward the stairwell, kicking off the ceiling to speed away. Bakugo started to chase her. Don't ignore me, round face! Kaken! Izuku yelled. Bakugo stopped. He turned slowly. Your opponent is me. Izuku stood in a fighting stance, low to the ground, legs spread, ready to curl. You said I was just a pebble. Well, try kicking me now. Bakugo's eyes narrowed. The vein in his forehead pulsed. He forgot about Uraraka. He forgot about the bomb. You looked down on me, Bakugo whispered. Hiding that quirk for years. Pretending to be weak. You think you're better than me because you can bounce? He raised both gauntlets. I'll show you what happens to a rubber ball when it meets a landmine. Monitoring room. Whoa! Kirishima shouted, watching the screens. Bakugo is totally ignoring the objective. That's not very manly. It is a personal grudge, Tokoyami observed, crossing his arms. A dangerous volatility. All Might gripped the microphone, his knuckles white. Young Bakugo, your pride is your strength, but it is also your poison. And young Midoriya, you provoked him intentionally. A risky gambit. The hallway. Bakugo charged. He used small explosions in his palms to propel himself forward, moving faster than a sprinter. Die! He unleashed a right hook. Izuku curled. But this time, he didn't stay put. Ricochet mode, engage. Izuku launched himself at the left wall. He hit the concrete, clack, and bounced off at a sharp angle. He shot past Bakugo's head, missing him by inches. Miss me! Bakugo yelled, turning to fire a blast at Izuku's back. But Izuku wasn't there. He had hit the opposite wall. Clack. And the ceiling. Clack. And the floor. Clack. Izuku was ping-ponging down the hallway. He wasn't fighting. He was retreating, but he was doing it at 40 miles per hour. Stop running! Bakugo screamed, propelling himself after the bouncing green blur. I'm not running! Izuku's voice echoed from the sphere as he ricocheted off a doorframe and shot up a flight of stairs. I'm repositioning. Bakugo blasted up the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. Coward! They reached the 3rd floor. It was a maze of support pillars and narrow corridors. This was where Izuku wanted him. Izuku uncurled at the end of a long hallway, skidding to a halt. He panted, sweat dripping into his eyes under the goggles. The motion sickness was starting to tickle the back of his throat. Bakugo rounded the corner. He stopped. He was panting too, but from rage, not exertion. End of the line, Deku. Bakugo raised his right gauntlet. He reached for the pin on the side. Kaken, don't! Izuku's eyes widened. Not indoors. If I don't hit you directly, it won't kill you. Bakugo grinned maniacally. Young Bakugo, stop. All Might's voice cut through the calm's earwig. Are you trying to kill him? If you use that stored charge, I will stop the match and disqualify you. Bakugo froze. His hand twitched over the pin. Disqualify? He muttered. For using my power? He lowered the gauntlet. But the rage didn't dissipate. It just concentrated. Fine, Bakugo spat. I don't need the big one to bury you. He rushed forward again. Izuku took a breath. He's closing the distance. He thinks I'm cornered. Izuku looked at the walls. Concrete. Hard. Good restitution coefficient. He looked at the pillars. Reinforced steel and concrete. Load bearing. Calculation complete. Polymer, tungsten shell. Izuku curled. Bakugo fired a barrage of explosions. Boom! 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 They hit the ball. Smoke filled the hallway. Gotcha, Bakugo sneered. But out of the smoke, a sound emerged. Whir! Izuku was spinning in place. He wasn't moving forward. He was generating torque. The friction against the floor was creating a high-pitched whine. Smoke rose from the rubber burning against the linoleum. What the? Sonic spin dash! Izuku released the friction. He didn't aim for Bakugo. He aimed for the wall behind Bakugo. He shot past Bakugo's legs so fast the wind pressure nearly knocked the blonde over. Clang! Izuku hit the metal door at the end of the hall. He bounced back. Clang! He hit the wall near the ceiling. Clang! 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 He was bouncing in a triangle pattern around Bakugo. He was moving too fast for the human eye to track clearly. He was just a green streak and a series of deafening impacts. Bakugo tried to aim. Damn it! Stand still! Boom! He fired at the ceiling. Missed. Boom! He fired at the floor. Missed. Izuku was everywhere and nowhere. I can't hit him, Izuku thought, his world a blur of gray concrete and flashing lights. If I uncurl to punch him, he'll blast my face off. I have to incapacitate him, or change the battlefield. Uraraka-san! Izuku shouted into his comms, his voice distorted by the spinning. Where are you? 5th floor. Uraraka's voice came back, strained. Ida saw me. He's monologuing about being evil. I can't get close to the weapon. Are you near a pillar? What? Yes. The central pillar. Grab onto something. Izuku yelled. I'm bringing the house down. What? Izuku broke his triangular pattern. He adjusted his angle of incidence on the next bounce. He aimed for the central support column of the 3rd floor, the spine of the building. Mass x velocity x density equals destruction. Bakugo saw the trajectory change. He realized what Izuku was doing. DKU. Don't you dare! Bakugo launched himself to intercept. He fired an explosion directly at Izuku's path. But a ball in motion, weighing 200 kilograms and moving at 80 miles per hour, has a lot of inertia. Bakugo's blast hit Izuku. It scorched his shell. It rattled his teeth. But it didn't stop him. It just deflected him slightly. Slightly is enough. Instead of hitting the pillar dead center, Izuku hit it at an angle. Crack boom. The impact was thunderous. The concrete of the pillar shattered. The steel rebar inside groaned and bent. But Izuku didn't stop there. He ricocheted off the compromised pillar, hit the floor, and smashed into the second support pillar on the opposite side. Crunch. The structural integrity of the 3rd floor failed. 5th floor. Create a world of chaos. Ida laughed maniacally, standing over the paper bomb. I, the villain, shall never be caught by WHOA. The floor lurched. It didn't collapse, but it tilted. Violently, the entire building shifted 5 degrees to the right as the support beams on the 3rd floor buckled. Ida, standing in his rigid armor, lost his balance. He flailed, sliding across the polished floor. By the laws of architecture. What is happening? The paper bomb, which was on a stand, also began to slide. Uraraka, who had been clinging to a window frame per Izuku's warning, saw her chance. Now, she pushed off the wall. She tapped herself. 0 gravity. She floated over the sliding Ida. Sorry, Ida-kun. She reached out. Ida tried to activate his engines to intercept, but his wheels spun uselessly on the tilted, slick floor. He was sliding backwards. No! The weapon! The bomb slid right past him. Uraraka dove. She wrapped her arms around the papier-mâché missile. Captured! She squeaked. Third floor. Dust choked the air. The hallway was a mess of rubble and twisted metal. The floor was slanted at an awkward angle. Bakugo coughed, waving the dust away. He had been thrown against the wall by the shift. Deku! He growled, pushing himself up. Where are you? He looked around. Embedded in the opposite wall, surrounded by a spiderweb of cracks, was Izuku. He wasn't a ball anymore. He was hanging half out of the drywall, his limbs limp. His helmet was cracked. His green suit was scorched black in places. He slid out of the wall and collapsed onto the tilted floor, groaning. I think I spun too much, Izuku mumbled into the floor. Bakugo stared at him. He looked at the destroyed pillars. He looked at the slanted floor. He realized what had happened. Izuku hadn't tried to beat him. He had ignored him. He had attacked the building to help Uraraka. Hero team wins! All Might's voice announced. Bakugo's knees shook. He didn't lose the fight. Izuku was on the ground, barely conscious. Bakugo could walk over and blast him right now, but he had lost the match. He didn't even try to hit me, Bakugo whispered. His hands dropped to his sides. The explosions died out. Review session. The class was gathered back at the monitoring station. The atmosphere was a mix of awe and confusion. Well, All Might said, looking at the battered Izuku and the fuming Bakugo. That was destructive. Who can tell me who the MVP of this match was? Yayorozu raised her hand instantly. It was Ida, sir. Eh? Ida blinked. Me? Yes, Yayorozu nodded confidently. Let's break it down. She pointed to Bakugo. Bakugo acted on a personal grudge, abandoning the objective immediately. He used lethal force in a training exercise. Reckless and unbecoming of a hero, Bakugo glared at the floor, saying nothing. She pointed to Izuku. Midoriya-sen formed a plan, but it was incredibly dangerous. Destroying the support pillars of a building you are inside is suicidal. If the collapse had been total, he would have killed himself, his partner, and the villains. It was a Pyrrhic victory reliant on structural failure. Izuku winced. She was right. He had calculated the tilt, but he hadn't accounted for the age of the concrete. It could have been much worse. She pointed to Uraraka. Uraraka-san lost focus mid-match and giggled at Ida's acting, revealing her position. However, her capture was solid. She turned to Ida. Ida-kun prepared the battlefield to negate Uraraka's quirk, removing objects she could float. He stayed on guarding duty. He assumed the role of the villain to immerse himself. His defeat was caused purely by the catastrophic environmental damage caused by the other team. All Might's sweat dropped. Yes. Exactly. Young Ida was the most correct. Though young Midoriya's use of ricochet angles was very impressive geometry. Geometry doesn't save you from a pancake collapse, Yayorozu noted dryly. The aftermath. The locker room was quiet. Most of the boys had already left. Izuku sat on the bench, holding an ice pack to his head. His helmet lay next to him, the visor cracked down the middle. You okay, Midoriya? Izuku looked up. It was Todoroki. The dual-haired boy was changing silently. Oh yeah? Just the usual. Motion sickness. And I think I bruised my ribs when I hit that second pillar. You're crazy, Kaminari said, leaning around a locker. You turned the building into a pinball machine. I've never seen Bakugo look so confused. He looked defeated, Tokoyami added. His pride took a heavy blow. The door slammed open. Bakugo stood there. He was still in his costume, minus the gauntlets. He breathed heavily. The room went silent. Bakugo walked over to Izuku. He stopped right in front of him. Izuku tensed. Was he going to hit him? Hey, Bakugo said. His voice was raspy. Keikaken? You beat me, Bakugo said. The words seemed to physically hurt him to say. Not in a fight. You can't beat me in a fight, you rubber freak. But you won the match. He clenched his fists. But this isn't over. I'm going to become the #1 hero. And to do that, I have to beat everyone. Even a jumping bean like you. He turned and stormed out. Don't think you're ahead of me, Deku. he shouted over his shoulder. Izuku watched him go. A slow smile spread across his face, despite the pain in his ribs. He called me Deku, Izuku whispered. But it didn't sound like useless this time. It sounded like rival, Kirishima grinned, slapping Izuku on the back. Ouch. Sorry. Izuku yelped as the slap hit his bruise. That evening, Izuku walked home under the orange glow of the streetlights. His body ached, but his spirit was soaring. He had faced Bakugo. He hadn't run away. He hadn't just curled up and cried. He had fought back using his own power, his own brain. He stopped at a crosswalk. He pulled out his notebook. Entry, indoor combat. Lesson, ricocheting in enclosed spaces increases velocity but decreases situational awareness. Need to work on sonar or vibration sensing to map the room while spinning. Also, try not to destroy the building next time. Yaoyorozu-san was scary. He closed the book. He looked at his hand. He could turn it into a hard, green sphere segment at will now. I can do this, he said to the empty street. From the shadows of an alleyway, a pair of red eyes watched him, a defensive type. A scratchy voice whispered. Interesting. But everything breaks if you touch it the right way. Tamura Shigaraki scratched his neck, watching the boy walk away. Game start.